Thank God I am paying attention on the phone, or else I would have been rambling on forever and losing information. Just shut up for a second. Ah, freaking technology. I want to make sure that this is public. Yes, done. Oh my Lord. Okay. Let's try this again. There should be somewhere to invite friends. I guess only when I'm on the phone doing the live, actually through the phone, can I do all that. So I'm just going to wait a second. Sorry, I don't know what the hell happened. What the hell? But I noticed it immediately, so that's nice. I don't know. It showed through the streaming software it was still going. So, but Facebook said, Oh, no, you didn't. So the information that's coming across from our professionals is redundant. It's monotonous, and we're tired of hearing it. Give us something we can use. What tools can I actually use? Teach me. Teach the entire population. But now we've pretty much lost a lot of trust in people. Instead you should be punching up. Experts often focus on restrictions and mandates. No one is bringing up an approach to these issues. People are resisting rules. That's what we are inclined to do when you restrict us from doing anything, especially as spoiled Americans. We do whatever we damn well please. So knowing that people are going to do this, we should educate in a manner that teaches these people, that isn't going to be resistant to what you're trying to convey. You need to adapt your approach to the population you are trying to teach. This is where effective communication comes in handy, and I don't know anybody really anymore, except for the guys on Be the Change, who can really effectively use their words to communicate how they feel and their point of view without lathering it with emotions. I didn't ask how you felt, I'm asking for the data, so I can determine how I feel. And then I can understand how you feel. And I can look at all sides of the argument and I can form this conclusion. That's how it's supposed to work. But hey, that's a lot to expect from people these days. So the whole resource issue and how people can do this, especially in the poor and underserved communities, I don't care what skin color you are. We know that a poor population is not going to get the same approach as a minority community, or as a wealthy population, or it's going to appear biased because the resources are available in those communities because there's more money. Well, obviously they don't need it as much as the minorities do, so you should be allocating those extra resources that they're not using and you're wasting to the people largely affected by all of it. It's easy for a rich person to stay home and work from their home office. It's not exactly easy for me to take my butt back to my house and take care of patients. Although that's what the doctors did in Laredo. Most of the media time that's wasted is focused solely on Trump and became a missed opportunity to point out failures at other levels of government. And that was Trump's whole point. You wouldn't be begging for the nation's help from the federal government and overwhelming what little, we should be able to take care of our nation, but everybody all at once. I mean, that's pretty demanding. What about some personal responsibility at the state level? What are your local governments doing before we step in to help? If you don't have the resources to do certain programs, hell yeah. But if their efforts are going to be wasted, there was so many people staged with Crucial 60, 70 extra staff sitting on a hospital or on standby to go work at a hospital that was never going to need that many people. It was such a waste of dollars, and that's part of my problem with this whole thing, is the cash that was just misused and thrown away when we really needed those resources somewhere else. So, for example, when Abbott lifted the mask mandates, criticism was overly focused on restrictions and not what resources there are to prevent this from outbreaking again and help. Focus on the education. Nope, they wasted it complaining about Abbott. Need critics to drop the politics and hold members of all parties responsible for lack of action. We need resources no matter what side you are on. And Vinay's right. I mean, the politics got so wrapped up in this crap because it was an election year and everybody hated Trump. So everything's his fault. They're still blaming him. They wanted him to come on and say to his supporters and his followers to go get vaxxed, so he did, and that wasn't good enough. It's like, you know, no matter what the man does, he's going to be hated. So it is what it is. So you need to hold your local, everything starts at the local level. Hold your local officials responsible and then go up the chain. You don't just go right to the executive of your company without trying to resolve a problem with lower level management first, because that's why they're there. You don't just go right up the chain. You start low and you work your way up, because they're going to want to know, well, did you try to solve it down here? If you didn't, well, they're going to tell you to go back. The experts punch in a safe direction. So our experts actually need to start pushing back instead of sucking it up and trying to pacify the public because they're so fearful of this cancel culture. Going on TV and criticizing the public is unlikely to lead to professional repercussions. So the experts go on and blame the public, and it's not going to lead to problems in their career. But if they name names and hold other people responsible, then they run the risk of a professional suicide, pretty much. Kind of like Natalie Maines from the Dixie Chicks did when she went on there and criticized the war and every other damn thing. They were on top of the world, and right after that, oh shit, nope, not anymore. So speaking to the media about failures at state level and local government often result in repercussions or threats of repercussions. The folks who go on TV need to grow courage. All of us need to grow courage. You got to be the change. That's what all of this stands for. Be the change you want to see happen. When your voice starts getting added to somebody else's voice, then you start to become a dull roar. And then when you start adding the population, you become a very, very powerful force to be reckoned with. But it starts with you. You have to do this together. You need to go speak to your local politicians. Stand up and support those who are speaking up. There is power in numbers. It's easy to say popular slogans like Black Lives Matter, but is that person also demanding resources to get vaccines to minority communities? Probably not. They're just got a frame on their Facebook page or their Instagram profile. BLM. Blacks do not want to hear that. What are you doing to help? You chanting a slogan is not helping. It's really not. They will tell you that. Just ask. Because nobody's asking them. How many videos did we see of white people speaking for a crowd of black people? Then black folks weren't saying anything because they're like that. I think they were all in shock. That's not her argument to make. So another one is a big one with the Facebook, a worthy judge of medical info. So we're going to talk about fact checkers. And I know I've watched Vinay on Z-Dog's show talk about this a lot, but Facebook fact checkers determined on an article op-ed written by the MedPage professor and editor-in-chief was misleading. Then this was on, it was healthfeedback.org. The point of the article isn't what is being debated. Okay, he's not saying he agrees or disagrees with what the article contained. It's the $800+ billion company deciding what an op-ed by a professor can be stamped as misleading. Why is a company saying that a professor and editor is misleading? While reviewing an article, Vinay discovered the process of fact-checking is really obscure. But what is clear is who the reviewers are. They are disproportionately academics on Twitter who have mega follower counts. In one case, a reviewer had already tweeted criticism of the article before being selected as a fact checker. Right here. They are cherry-picking criticism from Twitter celebrities in order to distinguish dissenting opinions. I mean, it's ridiculous. Healthfeedback.org is relatively new. It lists 3 reviewed articles prior to COVID and 7 after. Had 10 reviewers pre-COVID and 19 since January 2020. They're not even a respected and referenced organization. They're a celebrity Facebook fact checker. That's fantastic. Of the fact checkers selected since the start of COVID, 15 of them, 79%, have active Twitter accounts. They have on average of 42,000 followers. Only 4 fact checkers had served on more than one occasion. Among the fact checkers on 3 reviews on the website, there were no repeating reviewers. Half were on Twitter with an average of 800 followers. The independent fact checkers appear to be far more active than the average epidemiologist faculty member. In one case, it appears a fact checker was chosen because he had already written a Twitter thread that was critical of the article. Independents, no info on the process on how they go about selecting these fact checkers. They're just random. Like, this kind of happened in 98, maybe 99, when I was in college. I think 98. We had an English academic for at the end of our semester. We had to sit in front of a board made up of 3 independent judges, and we had to present this material that we had to write about. And there was no real guide. It was all based on the English instructor's opinion, and I know I'm a really good writer. So to fail me was completely ridiculous, and the other 2 judges had passed me. I went to our HVAC instructor at the time, and he had a department meeting in the HVAC building with these people, and we all stood up to speak because only 4 of us out of the entire class had passed. It was bad. So they did away with that process after that because it was based on opinion and not a guiding scale. You can't do it. It doesn't work that way. So stop doing that. Hey, Benedict. Oh, let's see here. Is this really? There we go. I'm going to say I had all these tabs open. As you can see, I was a little busy. Increased mortality in community tested cases of SARS-CoV-2 lineage, the B117 variant. That's the UK variant. So the B, or is it B? I think it's B1351. Yeah, is the South African variant. The 117 is the UK. The study results are showing that not only is it more transmissible than pre-existing SARS-CoV-2 variants, but also may cause more severe illness. Remember how we said it doesn't appear to be killing more people? Remember that? So that's what this is showing. I'm not going to go through the entire freaking study, but it's here. There's supplementary data. What the hell is that? So when you go to it, you'll be able to click on it, but there is that information. So remember how we said, you know, it didn't look like it was, but now it is. The data changes so quickly when we get more of it. This has been in the news. I wanted to talk about this. The WHO points to wildlife farms in southern China as likely source of this pandemic. There is a playlist there, but the WHO found new evidence that these wildlife farms were supplying vendors at the Wuhan market. China promoted the farming of wildlife as a way to alleviate rural populations of poverty. That is fact. I have spoken to people who were in China that have said the same damn thing, and this was before any of this even really made the news. They're out of food sources over there. Their swine flu killed millions of pigs. They have lost billions. If that disease makes it to the U.S., the impact on our economy and our food sources will be devastating. And ironically, in Junior's book, you know, if the animals, well, if people infected die in the water and it's a contaminated food source, or a water source for them. So I'm really surprised that this has not affected. And actually, maybe he might have to, in his next 2 books, maybe make the disease adapt to the animals, because like right now, they're surviving off the land. But this is jumping back and forth between animals and humans, and a swine flu that killed millions of pigs over there. And that's a big source of their food. A lot of his Asian food is based on pork. If in February 2020, when outbreak was winding down, China did an about face and shut the wildlife farms down. Remember, in the beginning, they denied any of this, and then they shut it down. They employed 14 million people. It was a $70 billion industry, and that is just lost completely. It's looking more and more like it originated in South China. So it discusses that. Yeah, they sent out instructions to the farmers about how to safely dispose of the animals, to bury, kill, or burn them in a way that didn't spread disease. So this is saying that the government does believe that this could be a source, even though that they were denying it from the get-go. Sorry, I'm trying to prop this up. I need my bottle of water. If I don't quit drinking coffee, I'm gonna be bouncing off the walls. So, wildlife farms. Don't get your food from a wildlife farm, please. I know over there it's normal, but for us, let's not contaminate our food sources, okay? Swine flu. China under fire unfairly for clot risk. Okay. So we're going to go back to the AstraZeneca vaccine, unfairly under fire over clot risk. Okay, so actually, this is that Reuters article that I had the notes written about. Yeah, so like there was U.S. Customs and Border Protection picked up the scent of pork on a woman arriving from China at Chicago O'Hare International Airport. Soon the dog's handler discovered and confiscated a ham sandwich in the purse of a passenger who had flown on a China Eastern Airlines flight from Shanghai. The danger that the food might be contaminated with African swine fever and spread the disease to the United States. China has lost millions of pigs in outbreaks of the disease, pushing its pork prices to record highs, forcing purchases of costly imports and roiling global meat markets. So food is becoming a huge problem for China. I've heard this from more than one place. Okay, so here we go. The company and health officials argued against a causal link. Denmark and Norway were first to stop administering the vax. Remember, AstraZeneca is the one that Europe stopped using. Germany and France followed, cited cases of bleeding, blood clots, and low platelet counts. The Norwegian health officials, Ireland, Netherlands, Italy, and Australia banned certain batches because they were concerned that maybe the batches were contaminated. Due to the number of shots given, it's considered extremely low risk, but above average if confirmed to be linked to the vaccine. So it's kind of right there in the middle. I mean, it's obviously not like mass devastation and people aren't just dropping dead from this. More research is needed. AstraZeneca stated in the study there were blood clots found in participants, but the majority of those were in the non-vaccinated group. Remember, we've also been locked in our damn house and not very active and up moving around, which is what prevents blood clots from happening. So is our behavior during this pandemic increasing our risk for blood clots and working from home, or our lack of moving around? Are those factors? Those are all things that influence outcomes. So we have to do studies. There is a huge vaccine concern in the immunocompromised. And it's kind of like 50-50 in this area. I know there's a lot of question. It appears to only work in some patients. This particular study only focused on organ transplant recipients, okay? So you need to at least remember that. Among 436 that received the vaccine, only 17% mounted detectable antibodies, and those were in both mRNA vaccines, Pfizer or Moderna. In contrast, individuals with healthy immune systems had 100% detectable antibodies. So the vaccine is causing you to produce your own antibodies against it, but in organ transplant recipients, it's not an effective vaccine to prevent serious symptoms from happening. People who take anti-metabolites are the ones that are not showing a good result. And an anti-metabolite is a substance that interferes with the normal metabolic processes within cells, typically by combining with enzymes, considered a cytotoxic drug because it kills cells. Certain cancer drugs. Cells are tricked into taking the drug and then using the anti-metabolites instead of normal building blocks of genetic material, RNA and DNA. Immunosuppressant drugs were 5 times less likely to develop antibodies. The CDC should be updating the guidelines to warn people about this. So now, you've heard all these people, oh, no, you should go get it, if you have a compromised immune system. But now we're finding in certain people, it's not helping. But we need to warn people because they might be making decisions based on wrong data that's not up to date. So we have a personal public health responsibility to share research and up-to-date information. And people need to understand where to go get this in a healthy and effective manner. And it's just not happening. They have found no increased risk of death as they thought would be the case. So that's important. But if it's something that's going to impact how a person chooses their treatment options, then you need to inform them of everything. It's a responsibility that we have. Moderna did start a trial for the next generation vaccine. It's being developed for a potential refrigerator stable that will facilitate easier distribution and administration. In phase 1 trials, they're evaluating 3 dose strengths in a 2-dose series. It will be compared with a 2-dose series of 100 of the mRNA currently authorized dose level to be evaluated in future studies. So they're going to compare the effectiveness. Cancer patients respond poorly to first COVID mRNA vax dose. The results emphasize, they were saying in some patients, oh, we can delay the first dose and we can do all this, or a second dose. Well, in some patients, that's not advisable. There's so much misinformation out there that people do not freaking know what is right anymore. I mean, this is a media responsibility at this point in time. Please start holding them freaking responsible. You better be packing, girl. You kick your ass for not answering the phone, Shannon. So, folks, start writing hate mail to your local media and CNN and Fox, and quit giving their opinion and give us the facts. Give us the up-to-date information because it changes daily based on new science. 28% of cancer patients obtain protection after the first dose of the Pfizer vax, including 13% of blood cancer patients. Compared with the first dose seroconversion, it occurred in 97% of patients. Second dose brought adequate immunity to nearly all. So it begs the question of, should cancer patients receive the one-dose vaccine? Is it going to be enough? It's another problem. Some patients that one-dose vaccine might not be a good idea in. These are things you really need to try to look forward into the future and wonder if it's going to be a factor in what choice you make. I am going to go to the fatality. Hang on. I'm going to skip ahead for a minute. But yeah, COVID-19 reinfections, are they really that rare? And let me find the notes on that right here. Antibodies. Mid page. Where the hell is it? One, three. Sorry, I got to compare it to the sources. How are the vaccines? Okay, so I guess that is it. Okay. So I am going to, right here. So let's jump to the COVID-19 reinfection. Is it more common than we think? Relatively alarming study casts doubt on herd immunity developing from natural infection alone. God, I thought I had more. Right here. Older people appeared especially susceptible to reinfection. Okay, in the very beginning, and we have heard so long, oh, reinfection, you know, it doesn't seem very common. For the past 6 months, I have been talking to people who have family members, the entire family becoming reinfected. So yeah, it's pretty freaking common when they confirm it at the same hospital both times, and it's 6 months apart. I mean, seriously, that's really hard to argue against there. So yes, it is more common than we think. And sex nor time since previous infection made a difference in the risk. So there's not as to who is more at risk. Older people do tend to look like they are more at risk. It's not exclusive to that group. Found adults 65 and older had 47% observed protection against reinfection. Overall, in the general population who've been infected previously, 80% were protected. Still saying reinfections are rare with only a handful of globally reported cases. I'm like, I've met several confirmed cases. Who is not reporting this data? Where is it going? What the hell? I have questions. I need answers, because I ain't getting your stupid vaccine until I have my answers. Sorry. Prior evidence suggests 5 to 6 months of immunity. I don't want to go into too many numbers. People get like so freaking bogged down with data. It talks about the limitations down at the bottom. So like I said, when I share the sources. I'm going to have the topics so you can click right on it, but you can reference it easier. So yeah, it is more common. It's very, 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 very common. But I want to touch upon that ZDogg.
So 10 million people.
I'm going to have to turn on my audio, and I got to mute my mic when I do this, but this Vanden something video, he's going on and on about this. He had a great question that he posed in the very beginning, but he actually is, his case actually, he's actually making the case for mass designation. What the hell? You can't come out and say, prove me wrong. The burden of proof is on him. If he's making this argument, you need to give supporting data, not I'm making this argument. Now prove me wrong with all your information. And that's where the argument went downhill. But what he was saying made a lot of sense. So I am going to make sure I have everything turned up here. I'm going to mute my mic. And I'm going to start ZDogg here. Make sure. Okay, here we go.
People have sent me this letter and video by a Dr. Gert van den Bussche, a European fella, who is arguing that our approach to vaccination, mass vaccination with a, quote, prophylactic vaccine during a pandemic is going to destroy civilization and mankind as a species. This is more or less literally what he says in this, and it's terrifying, and there's big scientific words, and he makes this very compelling sounding case that everything we're doing is wrong. What I'm going to do today is tell you why actually his very case makes the case for why mass vaccination is the answer to solving this pandemic and preventing exactly what he's saying. All right, let's start at the beginning. Who is this guy? So if you've seen the video, again, 1 million people have sent it to me. He presents himself, or is presented as a world vaccine expert whose credibility and legacy is being put on the line because he's making a dissenting statement. And in his letter, journals, he says something to the effect of, nobody's listening. All the vested interests want mass vaccination. They need to prove me wrong before another vaccine is given. They need to halt the global campaign of mass vaccination or else. Now, of course, this is insanity because you don't come out as a dissenter and say, prove me wrong or else halt everything you're doing. Falsify me. No, the burden is on you to prove that you're right, brother. And this is what he's saying. First of all, who is he? This is important because you can always, and it's important because the anti-vax crowd has taken this guy and elevated him, of course, because his sentiment is entirely anti-current vaccine, even though he starts his whole screed by saying, I am not an anti-vaxxer, which, by the way, should be a trigger for you that every single anti-vaxxer starts their statement with that statement. Whereas you will never hear Paul Offit start his statement with, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but because he doesn't need to, because everyone knows his vaccine credentials, right? So this guy is being trumpeted as an expert, but who is he? He's a veterinary medicine doctor, so he's not a human doctor, but he does have postdoctoral training and PhD in virology. He's worked in various institutions, including the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Gavi, and as project managers and supervisors in certain pharmaceutical companies in the vaccine space. So he has experience in vaccines. There's no doubt about it. Is he a world expert on it? Well, it's impossible to tell because he hasn't really published extensively on vaccines that I can find. He's done conferences and things like that, but he claims he has, this thing in the works for a natural killer cell vaccine, but I can't seem to find any patents or anything like that. Now, prove me wrong on that, that's fine. So let's assume he has some credentials, even though, again, and remember, it fits this narrative of this very romantic figure of the mad vaccine scientist who no one's listening to, who's right about this thing. Now, what's he saying he's right about? And the rest of the world is wrong. He's saying that when you have a pandemic and the coronavirus is replicating everywhere. Things like lockdowns, viral mitigation, things like masks, trying to slow the spread of the virus, and vaccines are going to cause the opposite effect, because what you're doing is you're preventing people from developing natural immunity that isn't necessarily purely antibody based. It has other aspects of innate immunity like natural killer cells and T cells and things like that that can prevent infection. And we should be allowing that. Basically, his philosophy is let it rip. He actually calls it a harmless virus. So now already you can start to go, well, okay, so can this guy be right about it being a harmless virus when more than 500,000 Americans are dead, and then also be right about what he's saying? So start to question logically the cohesion of what he's saying, right? So he's saying it's a harmless virus. It ought to just be allowed to basically replicate, and then we should use other strategies like his natural killer cell vaccine, which isn't developed, isn't offered, and isn't ready, and may not even be a thing. So that's his take. And he says by vaccinating during a pandemic, what you're doing is you're saying, okay, the virus is everywhere. It's not like the virus is rare and we're trying to prevent a rare virus. We're vaccinating in the midst of a rapidly replicating virus. What you're doing is you're creating an antibody defense with the vaccine that he claims does not prevent the virus from actually replicating in vaccinated people, does not prevent asymptomatic shedding of virus in vaccinated. Therefore, you are putting selective evolutionary pressure on the virus to evade the vaccine defense and mutate, and you select for mutations that then escape vaccine, these vaccine escape variants. And he's saying in the setting of this, when there's so much viral replication, the vaccine is going to encourage these variants to occur, and these variants are going to be vastly more dangerous, deadly, and plague-like than the current natural pandemic, which should have just been allowed basically to unfold, is what you're reading between the lines of what he's saying. And therefore, mass vaccination is a crime, more or less, he's saying. He's actually saying that directly. And we need to halt it immediately because it's going to cause disaster.
I am going to pause this right here because I want to check the sound because it looks like it's glitching. The internet up here has been jacked. I am going to pause this right here. Okay. So I'm going to restart the video.
So and then he gets into very microscopic details of, okay, here's the natural killer cell response. He makes a few claims in this that we need to talk about. Are they true? The first claim is that the vaccines do not prevent or reduce even, he's saying, asymptomatic transmission in people who are vaccinated or viral replication in people who are vaccinated. This is just wrong. So the data, and especially data out of Israel, et cetera, in real world applications show that asymptomatic transmission plummets. And of course, viral replication is going to drop in a properly vaccinated person because you're binding antibodies that you've made because you've got vaccinated to the spike protein with very high affinity, and you're preventing the virus from entering cells, and you're actually activating aspects of your immune system, which I'm going to talk about, that prevent the virus from replicating. So that premise that he's operating on, I mean, maybe it's true in animals because he is a veterinarian, right? But in humans, no. And this idea that the vaccine doesn't prevent replication is not correct. In which case, one of the fundamental pillars of what he's saying is, well, you're vaccinating people, you're preventing them from getting sick with this variant, but you're allowing it still to replicate and thereby escape the vaccine and generate new variants. That's just not true. Now, he's right in that if you partially vaccinate a population or partially vaccinate an individual, then you absolutely allow for partial viral replication in that person because they don't have full immunity, or in that population because there are a lot of people who aren't vaccinated. So what's going to happen? More viral replication, which means more chance for the emergence of variants. Note this, the variants that have emerged so far emerged in the absence of vaccine pressure. Without any vaccine pressure, those already emerged, more contagious variants. And they still clinically work.
Okay. That's really important because they still clinically work. I'm going to stop it here. You can obviously see it's easy to find, but take the information. I'm going to stop here because I'm burned out reading it. There's still more because more news came out. Pressure from the U.S. Great. More conflicting information. So that's what we are going to... Oh, this pisses me off. Why does it keep pausing? Don't know why it does this. I really don't. It pauses on me and stops the feed, and I don't know. So hit me with questions in the comments. I'll answer them. I don't want to go overboard on the information because it's overwhelming to people. It's overwhelming to sit and read all this. It really is. It's frustrating. I fully expect that we're going to start seeing a climb in numbers. They're seeing climbs in numbers in other countries again, in other states that have reopened. And that's to be expected, but you're getting more of the population vaccinated, so there is going to be some kind of immunity. Still not getting vaccinated myself. I haven't. So I will be heading back to El Paso on Sunday evening. I got the interview on the Journey of a Combat Veteran spouse page with Junior on Saturday, so I'll be pretty tied up with that. And then I think we're going to do a podcast on his YouTube channel Saturday night. So, holy crap. Life is picking up again. At least I'm well rested.